message to the entire world. Moldova is finally free. And we would like to thank everybody who helped us in these difficult times.
They call her the leader of Moldova's silent revolution. The new pro-EU Prime Minister Maia Sandu established a coalition with the pro-Russian Socialists after months of political turmoil. The former government was plagued by allegations of blackmail, corruption and arbitrary arrests. Led by the powerful oligarch Vlad Plahotniuc, the Democratic Party refused for weeks to relinquish power. That's until Moscow, Washington and Brussels threw their weight behind Sandu's coalition. But with an alliance made up of two parties that are diametrically opposed to each other, how will anything ever get done? Well, let's go to our guests in Moldova's capital, Chisinau. Radu Marian is an MP with the Pro-Western Party for Action and Solidarity, and Vladimir Cebotari is the vice chair of the Democratic Party. Gentlemen, good to have you on the Newsmakers. Vladimir, would you accept that this is the end of your corrupt administration and the start of a new, cleaner one?
Of course I'm not. And there are lots of reasons to disagree with that. Mainly because it was the period when in Moldova, the most significant and extended projects in infrastructure, social welfare increasing has been done. And the fighting corruption has been done at the scale that never has experienced Moldova before. We didn't say that we cleaned totally the institutions. No, we just started in 2 and 3 years to fight real corruption. Yes, there are lots of the problems still in many branches and areas. Maybe the most affected is and still is judiciary. But the fact is that the people, high-level officials, ministers, lawyers, judges, prime ministers have been prosecuted, even there was representatives of the party that governed at that time. That means that real efforts have been put into that. In
Vladimir,
fighting corruption.
if you did nothing wrong, why has Plahotniuc fled the country?
Mr. Plahotniuc fled the country for the risks and security risks that were concerning him and his family. Everyone knew that Mr. Plahotniuc, there were some attempts to murder Mr. Plahotniuc and to kidnap his sons. And they were not for the first, this was not the first attempts. So he had to leave the country in order to take additional security measures, especially because in that period, in those days, there were lots of information saying that there are very real and severe threats to his respect.
I see. Okay. Radu Marian, there's somebody who's a part of the new coalition. We've heard from the old guard saying you guys have maybe made up some of the claims of corruption against them. Respond to that.
Yeah, so I would like to point out that all the international partners, the United States, European Union, they all agreed that the previous government abused its power and seriously undermined democracy. And the European Parliament even declared Republic of Moldova as a captured state. So I don't know if this is Trump that fabrication. This is a consensus of opinions from all our international partners. And the elections in February were approved that people want to change. And finally, this happened today.
Vladimir Cebotari, do you support this new government and hope that they do well?
Of course we support the government. This is the government that governs the country. How we can not support it? We will be a very constructive opposition and we will assist them to understand many of the processes. And by the way, 2 weeks ago, we had lots of allegations related to many of the projects that have been launched by Democratic Party. And now, even today or yesterday and the other days, we heard some reprisals with respect to those projects, which means that it was a lack of understanding of some of them. We will continue, of course, criticizing because we are an opposition party already, but our critics will be oriented to improve the projects and the reforms that the governance will be working on. And should we be heard or our opinion be asked, we will not hesitate to contribute to the maximum possible in
Right.
order to
Okay.
make the welfare of the people better.
Okay, good to hear that. Radu Marian, how are you going to govern? Isn't it a recipe for constant fighting when you have the pro-EU side on the one end and the pro-Russian one on the other?
Yeah, I think this new government, as odd as it might sound, it's indeed an odd coalition, but I think it's a proof of how bad the situation was with the rule of law and the democratic standards. And I think this coalition will work together as long as the top priority will be a fight against corruption, dismantling the oligarchic regime, restoring the rule of law, and restoring democracy, because this is what we need to finally bring prosperity to the people and trust. And if we're going to govern under these values, I'm confident that this government will be able to stay.
Help me
But
understand,
again,
certainly, Radu, help me understand just how deep this goes. When you say an oligarchic regime, it's not a small thing then, right? So we're talking about big money, big business, hotshots, controlling politicians, controlling industries. You're just going to get rid of that overnight?
Okay, so indeed, Mr. Plahotniuc has built an oligarchic regime, and just to give you an example, I mean, his media companies control almost 70% of the revenue streams of the media market. He has blackmailed and bought lots of MPs, and as weird as it sounds, it was not as strong as it seemed to be, because many judges connected to him have resigned. The Constitutional Court yesterday has resigned in corporate. A lot of people affiliated with the former regime have resigned and have seized the power, and that's a proof that his regime is falling. But of course, there are still a lot of work to do. I mean, the General Prosecutor Office.
Vladimir, yeah, so it's interesting. Vladimir, all 6 judges of the Constitutional Court stepped down. Respond to the idea that essentially Plahotniuc had the judges in his pocket.
Well, it's a little bit conflicting, those two statements. In case Plahotniuc was as interested to maintain its powers, and he had the judges in his pocket, and as long as no one can dismiss or fire any constitutional court judge, how would they, in that case, just leave their mandate in the constitutional court? So it's a little bit unlogic that, but they have left their offices and left the constitutional court, in my opinion, due to the political pressure that has been put on them, and of course, in my opinion, again, in order to save the face of that institution and to leave it, unfortunately, it became being very untrusted by the people. So I think this is one of the bases that have been taken by them in order to save and to rebuild the credibility of that institutions with the price of their professional reputation and so on.
Radu Marian?
Yeah, if I can add to that, I have a feeling that Mr. Cebotari has not read any news reports in the last week. The Venice Commission has issued a devastating report in regards to the activity and the decisions of the Constitutional Court. Everyone has agreed that the judges of the Constitutional Court have severely abused the Constitution. This is an institution that was supposed to protect the Constitution, but they violated it. I just want to mention that 3 of the constitutional judges were former members of the parliament for the Democratic Party, and one of the judges is a close relative to Mr. Plahotniuc, and they were placed there months before the election. So Mr. Plahotniuc tried to make some sort of an insurance policy from this institution in case he tries to lose power. So I really don't understand the statements of Mr. Cebotari. It's really had the feeling that he just tries to deny the reality. And reality, everyone knows the reality except the members of the Democratic Party.
Vladimir, are you delusional?
No, not of course. But I understand the emotions of my colleague, which unfortunately didn't went into too much detail analyzing the Venice Commission opinion, which overturned the practice of 20 years of the Constitutional Court. You may debate and have different opinion on the composition of the Constitutional Court, which was these days, but you cannot put under the questions the composition of the Constitutional Court and its ruling for the 20 years. So unfortunately, it was a very speed up decision. which didn't pay too much attention to the only constitutional practice and interpretation of the Constitution of Moldova. And with that opinion, I have only to congratulate the president of Moldova, Dodon, who only him obtained a win through that decision, not the other party. And I think that the Acum Bloc, which really are people that, in my opinion, are trying to do what they believe in, they have just been used by the opposite side, the side that they embraced, unfortunately, a person which is asking bribes of $1 million per month. They knew that, they accepted that, and a person which has politics oriented against the Republic of Moldova and its interests.
Final response from you, Radu. Go ahead.
Yeah, so these allegations, for that we need an independent prosecutor to look into it, and if needed, to prosecute. These allegations were known many years back, and the prosecutor were able to look into it further, but they did not do that. And Democratic Party knew about these allegations, and they did not say anything until now, until they realized that there's no chance for them to do any coalition with the Socialist Party. So it's obviously an independent prosecutor should look into these allegations and should prosecute if that's the case.
Okay, we'll be following events in Moldova closely here at the Newsmakers. For the moment, let me thank you gentlemen, Radu Marian and Vladimir Cebotari. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers.